Thank you all for joining us today for, I guess, the second meeting of Senate Housing Municipal Government. The first matter we have before us is the appointment of Deborah J. Goddard as Secretary of Housing. We do have a number of individuals signed up to testify on that appointment. Typically what we'll do is we'll have those individuals testify and then we'll call the nominee at the end. That doesn't make sense. At the end. We have a number of individuals, so I would ask that these individuals limit their testimony to 3 to 5 minutes, and we will start with a name that is familiar to many of us in state government, Ernie Almonte. I also see Rachel Heller, and I'll call you up in twos, if you will. Is Rachel here? You can sit at the table too and proceed after Mr. Almonte. Thank you, Ms. Heller. Ernie, if you could start by stating your name and occupation for the record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Button up.
It's up. It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ernie Almonte. I'm the former Rhode Island Auditor General, and I'm the former Executive Director of the League of Cities and Towns. Now semi-retired, and I'm coming here as a citizen of the state of Rhode Island. So good afternoon to all of you. It is my honor to be here today to speak in favor of Deborah Goddard as the Secretary of Housing and Chair of the Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corporation. As a lifelong Rhode Islander, I've watched the state transform over the years. Its municipalities evolving and its economic landscape changing, making it ever and ever a more attractive place to live and work. However, as in this case, as in many states across the nation, it has become a challenge for many to find housing. Rhode Island is my home, and I am invested in its success. I believe that to continue improving our housing landscape, Rhode Island needs a strong, experienced leader with the ability to bring together the right resources, build the right team, and make decisive moves to address these challenges. That's why I am excited about Governor Dan McKee's nomination of Deborah Goddard as the state's next housing secretary and chair of the Rhode Island Housing Mortgage Finance Corporation. Deborah is the kind of person who can bring not only a wealth of experience and expertise, but also the passion and drive necessary to develop effective solutions. Deborah's career has been marked by impactful leadership in the housing arena. Her experience spans across public, private, and nonprofit sectors, giving her a well-rounded understanding of how to approach Rhode Island's housing crisis. Her experience also equips her to address the regulatory and financial barriers that have stymied housing production in Rhode Island for many years. Restrictive permitting, limited municipal capacity, and underutilization of state and federal financing tools have all contributed to the housing shortage. Deborah's extensive experience with public housing governance, policy, and real estate development means she has the knowledge to streamline processes and expand access to financing, making it easier to build the affordable housing Rhode Islanders need. One of Deborah's greatest strengths is her collaborative leadership style. She listens, learns, and builds consensus around solutions. In her previous roles, Deborah built and led teams that were able to execute complex projects and navigate challenging environments in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in the cities of Boston and New York. If confirmed for Rhode Island, I am confident that she will continue this approach, bringing together stakeholders from across the housing and homeless sectors, including municipal leaders, developers, housing advocates, and community organizations. With her ability to bring diverse voices to the table, Deborah will ensure that all perspectives are heard and that Rhode Island's housing and homeless strategies are comprehensive and well-informed. Yes, I've watched Rhode Island's housing crisis unfold over the years, and I've seen the impact it's had in our communities. But I also see a path forward, and it's one that can be led by Deborah. With her leadership, Rhode Island can begin to rebuild its housing stock, prevent and reduce homelessness, and create a future where Rhode Islanders have a safe and affordable place to call home. Now is the time for decisive action, and with Deborah at the helm, I am confident that Rhode Island can move forward toward a brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Almonte. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, we can proceed. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Rachel Heller, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Citizens Housing and Planning Association, or CHAPA. We are a statewide housing organization in Massachusetts. And thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today regarding Deborah Goddard's nomination for Housing Secretary. It is an honor to be here today and to speak in support of Deborah, who has dedicated her career to public service. Deborah has worked at multiple levels of government and has expertise in zoning, housing finance, public housing, affordable housing preservation, homelessness, shelter, supportive housing, and homeownership. Deborah knows how government works, the importance of public engagement and working with stakeholders, and she knows how to get things done. I have known Deborah now for 15 years. We first met when I was the Housing Policy Director in the Massachusetts Senate on their Housing Committee. Deborah, in her role as General Counsel for the state's Department of Housing and Community Development, was one of the first calls that I would make when we were working through complex housing proposals. Deborah was an invaluable resource as Massachusetts developed the strongest affordable housing preservation law in the country and as we responded to the foreclosure crisis. We worked with Deborah and with DHCD as critical investments were being made into public housing to preserve our precious public housing stock and to expand housing options for people across income levels, particularly for people with extremely low incomes who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And not only did Deborah provide information that legislators really needed to be able to make effective policy decisions, she also helped me as a staff person in the legislature to educate policymakers and staff on our housing programs and laws. In my work at CHAPA, Deborah's experience and knowledge has been very impactful. CHAPA, as I mentioned, is a statewide housing nonprofit that brings together a very broad set of stakeholders to support the production and preservation of homes that are affordable for people with low and moderate incomes and to foster diverse and sustainable neighborhoods through planning and community development. CHAPA works with a broad group that includes state policymakers, quasi-governmental organizations, housing authorities, affordable housing developers, residents, legal services attorneys, real estate attorneys, municipal officials, you name it. And Deborah and her experience in her roles at the Department of Housing and Community Development and at Mass Housing is someone that all of these stakeholders respect. She is always there to provide information, to provide thoughts and feedback, and share her ideas on how we address our greatest housing challenges. Deborah really is the go-to person for information on housing policies. It's very fortunate for Rhode Island, but I'm kind of sad to not have her in Massachusetts. She's extremely knowledgeable on the financing mechanisms that we need, on the zoning that needs to be put in place to allow for the kinds of housing that we need. And Deborah is very generous with her time and her expertise. She understands the needs of people across income levels, the needs of our communities, and she is really the right person for this role. Rhode Island is very fortunate to have her. I know that she has the skills and the knowledge to implement the state's housing plan and to put Rhode Island on the path to a bright future where everybody has access to safe and healthy homes that they can afford. She has extensive knowledge of housing policies and our history, and she combines that with a really proactive outlook so that we can make sure that we are expanding housing opportunities for people across income levels and really ensuring that people have choice in where they live and that people in our communities have the base that they need to thrive. So again, I'm sad to not have her in Massachusetts, but I'm very glad that she will be here doing incredible work for the state of Rhode Island.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this witness? You want to come help and join in the cause down here?
Always happy to help.
Seeing no questions for those two witnesses, I do see that Jennifer Hawkins signed up written testimony, and we do have a letter of support from her. I also see signed up to testify Russ Partridge and Michelle Wilcox. If the two of you want to come join us. And Russ, we'll start with you.
Good afternoon. My name is Russ Partridge. has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to equitable housing solutions, strategic planning, and innovative policy making. Her leadership has consistently resulted in tangible improvements in housing and access to affordability. At a time when Rhode Island faces pressing housing issues, we need a leader with the expertise, vision, and dedication that I believe Deborah brings to this position. She possesses the skills to foster collaboration amongst government agencies, nonprofit, and private stakeholders while ensuring that housing policies reflect the needs of a diverse community. I'm confident that under her leadership, Rhode Island will make significant strides in expanding affordable housing, reducing homelessness, and strengthening neighborhoods across the state. I respectfully urge this community to support Ms. Goddard's appointment. Her leadership will undoubtedly serve Rhode Island well, and I look forward to the positive impact that she will have on our state's housing landscape. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please don't hesitate to ask questions if you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Partridge. Any questions for the witness? All right, proceed. Michelle, how are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you? Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Wilcox. I'm president and CEO of Crossroads, Rhode Island, the state's leading provider of housing and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the importance of strong, experienced leadership within the Rhode Island Department of Housing. Rhode Island is at a pivotal moment. Unsheltered homelessness has surged nearly 400% over the last 5 years, and our most recent point-in-time count recorded 524 men, women, and children living in places unfit for human habitation, up from about 100 people in 2020. While Crossroads operates 5 emergency shelters providing more than 250 beds, shelter is not a solution. Housing is the only way to end homelessness. Unfortunately, a recent report commissioned by the Rhode Island Foundation found that Rhode Island is nearly 25,000 affordable housing units below demand, one of the worst shortages in the country. Meeting this crisis requires strong, knowledgeable leadership, not only at the Department of Housing, but also at Rhode Island Housing, which plays a critical role in financing and developing the affordable housing our state so urgently needs. Deborah Goddard's leadership as Secretary of Housing is essential to advancing policies and partnerships that will reduce homelessness and expand affordable housing, and her appointment as chair of the Rhode Island Housing Board will ensure critical alignment between policy and execution. With over 40 years of experience, Deborah Goddard has built strong working relationships with housing and service providers and brings a deep understanding of both policy and strategic implementation. Her extensive experience in both the public and private sectors makes her also well suited to oversee and guide Rhode Island Housing. Ensuring that these two agencies work in concert is essential for making meaningful progress on housing production, preservation, and affordability. Having seasoned leadership in place will allow us to move forward with coordinated, proven, critical solutions to address Rhode Island's housing crisis. For these reasons, I strongly support Deborah Goddard's confirmation as Rhode Island's Secretary of Housing and her appointment as chair of the Rhode Island Housing Board. I urge the committee to confirm her so we can continue moving forward with the critical work needed to address our state's housing challenges. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to ensuring that Rhode Islanders have access to safe, affordable, and stable housing. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Wilcox. Any questions for the witnesses before us? On behalf of the entire committee, I do want to thank the two of you for the work you do. I know that there's many folks on this committee that appreciate and it's been a tough winter. We know that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work. Does anyone else wish to testify in person before I call the nominee in question before the committee? Acting Secretary, you can proceed. And as she does, I will read off just a few of the letters of support that we have received. Received a letter of support from GrowSmart, a letter of support from Neighbors Welcome, a letter of support from Housing Network RI, a letter of support from Housing Works, letter of support from Phipps House, a letter of support from Jeffrey Sachs, and a letter of support from Charlie Adams from Penrose, as well as a letter of support from the Preservation of Affordable Housing, and a conditional letter of support from Vin Marzullo, who could not be here today. He's on grandfather duty. And with that, I ask the acting secretary to introduce herself to members of the committee and proceed to tell us why she's endeavoring to help us address Rhode Island's housing crisis.
Good afternoon, Senators. It's a privilege to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself, my experience, my values and qualities, and my vision for Rhode Island's housing landscape and how we can work to address the housing and homelessness crisis in our state with urgency and compassion. I was born and raised in Scituate, Massachusetts, and in high school, my exposure to an extremely fractious debate over 44-unit affordable housing development ignited a passion in me to make a meaningful impact in the housing sector, and it continues to this day. This has been my life's work, spanning across multiple roles at the city and state level, working in the nonprofit sector, briefly in the for-profit sector, but primarily in public service. My career started as counsel for a nonprofit developer affiliated with the Archdiocese of Boston that focused on mixed-income family housing. From there, I moved to the City of Boston, to its Housing and Community Development Agency, first still as counsel, and then moving through positions overseeing real estate finance, neighborhood planning, and then overseeing the management of the housing community development portfolio. I was recruited, really deployed to the Boston Housing Authority to assume responsibility over its redevelopment program. I oversaw the redevelopment of 2 sites, projects valued at well over $100 million apiece, and secured the HUD grant for the redevelopment of a 3rd site. We were in the forefront of this national effort, and I can proudly say that we achieved success without displacing any residents, which was not a given at the time. After a year at the Harvard Graduate School of Design as a Loeb Fellow, I joined at Boston Community Development Corporation to oversee the community process and master planning for a $200 million mixed-use, mixed-income, transit-oriented enterprise. When the Duvall administration came in, I joined the Mass Department of when the Patrick administration came in. I joined the Department of Housing and Community Development, which administered an array of programs. As general counsel, my portfolio included home, block grant, 9% credits, fair housing, our affordable housing law 40B, weatherization, community services block grant, and several more programs as well. 7 years later, I moved to Mass Housing, the housing finance agency for Massachusetts, where I was installed as managing director for policy and program development. There, I worked to bring best practices related to sustainability, resident services, and enterprise lending into the programs offered, the financing programs offered by MHFA. I re-entered the arena of public housing as executive vice president for capital projects at the New York City Housing Authority. In this role, I oversaw construction projects worth $3 billion at any point in time and managed a staff of over 350 persons. There, I increased accountability, introduced industry standard practices, and streamlined operations. Finally, I moved back to Boston and decided to retire. For the most part, I failed. But I did offer consulting services as DJ Goddard Consulting for a bit, and this led me to Rhode Island and the Department of Housing. Starting in August of 22, I consulted with the department, working to launch several initiatives through the procurement and contracting process, including the state plan consultant, the municipal fellowship program. I initiated projects and programs, including the municipal housing cost impact study and AE services to assist localities and state agencies that are looking at properties for adaptive reuse. My experience in housing is uniquely deep and broad, and it has given me valuable insights into the intricacies of housing policy and development. I have built a comprehensive understanding of real estate development, community planning, and the political and financial dynamics that shape successful housing solutions. That is my resume. What stands behind the resume are the values that I bring to my work. I prioritize creating transparent, open, and accountable environments. Inclusivity, integrity, and collaboration have been hallmarks of my career. I am also keenly aware that I do not have all the answers. I firmly believe that the best outcomes are achieved when we work together, listen to diverse perspectives, and ensure that all voices are heard. I fully appreciate that I have succeeded in large part due to the genuine collaborations that I have fostered and sustained. My decision to come to Rhode Island stems from several factors. I am energized by the focus that the governor, the legislature, and innumerable stakeholders have put on addressing housing issues in Rhode Island. I have seen and want to nurture the commitment of the staff at the department. I believe that we can get our hands around the issues of housing and the housing and homelessness challenges in this state, and I believe that I can contribute meaningfully to attaining that goal. Rhode Island faces significant challenges that are not unique to our state, but they are urgent. My breadth of experience spanning policy, development, community engagement, on-the-ground implementation has shaped me into a well-rounded professional prepared to lead Rhode Island's housing agenda and address the challenges, particularly in housing affordability and availability, that we face. I believe that effective leadership is rooted in building relationships, whether with my team or across sectors. I believe in forging partnerships that bring together the expertise, passion, and drive necessary to address complex housing and homelessness challenges. It is through collaboration, I believe, that we can tackle Rhode Island's housing crisis and ensure that no one is left behind. If confirmed, my priorities will focus on both immediate needs and strategic long-term action to shape the future of housing in Rhode Island. These priorities are to build a strong Department of Housing, and this work has begun. I have developed an outreach list to aid in recruitment, and we are in the process of filling key vacancies for a revised organizational structure that reduces bureaucracy and enhances our capacity in areas such as housing production, finance, and homelessness prevention. Second, to steward funds wisely. As we transition from the pandemic era funding, it is crucial to steward resources wisely, ensuring that every taxpayer dollar is part of a cohesive strategy focused on equity and long-term sustainability. To this end, I am engaged in conversations with stakeholders and partners about the policies and programming that we will support through the $120 million available through the bond financing. I want to increase housing production and address the shortage of affordable housing. And again, I'm in conversations with Rhode Island Housing and other stakeholders to address cost issues, to foster collaboration with private developers, and streamline the funding and closing processes to create housing options for all income levels. And we need to address homelessness, of course. We are focused on both immediate shelter solutions and proactive measures to prevent homelessness, as well as long-term solutions. Housing that meets the varying levels of needs and income for all individuals and families. As well, I am looking at our homeless response system as a whole. It needs adjustments, and I'm working with my team to identify process improvements. My vision for Rhode Island is one where every person has access to safe, affordable, and stable housing wherever they want to live, because housing is the foundation for health, education, economic mobility, and overall well-being. In closing, I thank you once again for the opportunity to be here today. I hope that I'm able to work with all of you alongside our partners to build a Rhode Island that is equitable, sustainable, and accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the nominee? Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your willingness to step up to the plate in this moment. This is a conversation we had before, in part, but I would like to have it again for the committee. Given the likely cuts that are coming federally and the likely reorganization of housing infrastructure federally, can you talk a little bit about how you anticipate meeting those challenges here?
Well, first, I have to say we're extremely fortunate to have the bond money. It is very unclear to all of us how housing will be affected vis-a-vis HUD. Block grant has survived. Home has been a target for a while. We at the department don't receive a whole lot of emergency solution grant housing homelessness funds, but the COC does, the continuum of care, so we are worried about that. We are concerned, and I think Rhode Island Housing would share my concern, that with firings or the potential firings, that things will slow down and bring uncertainty to the market and even the conventional market. So I think our charge is to move our bond funds, move them intelligently. I will say, and I think I've said this to you, I am a little bit more concerned about the cuts in EOHHS and Medicaid, because so much of that affects our ability to keep people from being homeless or resolving their needs. That's where I'm really concerned.
Senator Mack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for making some time before this committee to speak with us members who are also equally as concerned, but willing and looking forward to that collaboration and leadership. I think one of the most important things is to have someone who's focused specifically on housing policy when staffing up the agency, recognizing that it's also currently at 50% staffing. Are there also plans to ensure that policy, especially low-hanging fruit to prevent homelessness, and to also address both the chaos in DC, but also understanding that we haven't had anyone really leading, because this is a new department, leading on fundamental policy to address many of the things that you outlined in your welcoming remarks?
Yeah. I will be hiring. I've created the position of Director of Policy and Evaluation, and fingers crossed, it should be posted by the end of this week or early next week. So yes, absolutely. That position will be supported by at least 3 persons, 2 of which are hired already. So absolutely a very strong interest of mine and a need, so that we make sure, as I said, we have a cohesive plan. We know why we're investing the money we're investing every time we make an award.
Any further questions, Senator Mack? Any questions from other members of the committee? Well, Acting Secretary, I don't want to belabor the point. I want to say thank you for the time that you've spent with me, engaging on discussion, particularly as it affects folks up and down the socioeconomic rungs that are affected by the housing crisis that we experience here in Rhode Island. Whether it's the 2,000 individuals at any point this year that will experience homelessness, the 22,000 units of affordable housing that we need to work immediately on developing as a state, or the more than 150,000 households that experience housing insecurity, and working to create housing options for all individuals. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Senator DeMario moves and Senator Murray seconds that the Senate Committee on Housing and Municipal Government recommends advice and consent of Acting Secretary Goddard to the full Senate. Roll call vote. Yes.
Senator DeMario?
Yes.
Senator Rogers?
Yes.
Senator Burke?
Yes.
Senator Goodard?
Yes.
Senator Coleman?
Yes.
Senator Mack?
Yes.
Senator Murray?
Yes.
Clerk Coleman?
Yes.
Leader Dela Cruz?
Yes.
Leader Lawson?
Yes.
The ayes have it. With that, we've recommended your approval to the full Senate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay.